A win for Florida homeowners. As of July 1st, people living in homeowners associations can now have a vegetable garden in their own backyard and hang out their clothes to dry, with some restrictions. I can't make this stuff up. That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. Stay tuned.
Hi there. Welcome to Cedar Paradise. The moment you purchased your home, you joined our wonderful homeowners association, whether you wanted to or not. The HOA is here to take care of you. You give us money, and in return, we maintain all the beauty you see around us. And if you don't pay up, we'll turn your life upside down.
Now, I know from reading the comments under many of my videos that some of you out there are absolutely 100% categorically opposed to homeowners associations. But HOAs are actually kind of hard to avoid in Florida. There are 50,000 of them in the state, and we are second only to California in the number of homeowners associations. An HOA, or homeowners association, is an organization within certain neighborhoods that creates rules and regulations that homeowners have to follow who live in that community. And they collect money from each homeowner to maintain certain things within the community. And they can also impose fines for people who violate the rules within the community. Some are very strict and require that you paint your front door from an approved list of paint colors. And some don't get into that at all. They're definitely not all the same. But if you own or purchase a home within an HOA, you're automatically a member, and therefore you really need to know what's going on. And many people who live in HOAs complain about rules and regulations that they deem arbitrary, or fines that are constantly increasing over little things like the lawn or the outside of the home. They complain about overly restrictive rules within the community. And what's the saying? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So these new laws are designed to sort of increase management's accountability, availability, and transparency, and sort of minimize, the HOA kind of neighbors that are walking around with a ruler measuring how tall your weeds have gotten and trying to impose a fine on you. We'll get to that. Now, HOAs were not created for nefarious reasons. In fact, the reasons behind them are pretty solid. They're there to maintain property standards. They're trying to keep the property values up. They collect money to pay for common areas and common services like the guard or the gate, or the tennis courts, maintaining the sign out front, things like that. And if you choose to move into an HOA, at least in theory, you should have the documents pertaining to the HOA so that you know what you're getting into. You're supposed to have a copy of the rules and regulations, the budget, everything else, so that you can read it and make up your mind. But we'll get into that in a minute. And before we get to the crux of the changes, I want to point out one thing I've noticed, that a lot of people use condo association and HOA interchangeably, and these laws are not affecting condos. This is single family homeowners associations, and I think there have to be 100 homes in the community or more. Now, if you're interested in what's going on with condos, I will drop a link to a video I made a few weeks ago about changes in what's happening with condos in Florida. So for me, what I think is most important when I read these laws is not that the HOAs are losing some of their power, but that they're being forced to increase their accountability. So let's jump into what some of these laws say. So some of the stuff that's really grabbing the headlines in the news, I think it's kind of trivial, although it's sort of funny to hear about. So I'm going to read some of these because I don't want to get it wrong, but two of the points that I've seen a lot mentioned are that you cannot get fined for leaving up holiday lights or decorations past the HOA's deadline without prior notice. And even after you get that notice saying you have to take it down, you get 1 more week to take them down. The HOA can no longer ban you or your guest, if you live in an HOA, from parking vehicles that are not commercial vehicles anywhere that the state or the municipality would allow them to park. So this includes pickup trucks and first responder vehicles. Now, my question is, because this is always the issue I get in HOA communities, can they have an advertisement on the side of the vehicle? So if it's a pickup truck, or like if you're a plumber and you have a van that has your advertisement on the side, typically that's an issue. You have to cover that ad. I don't see that that's been mentioned in this law, and that may not have changed. And that's important for a lot of people. So you still have to take off that ad or cover it somehow. And I think the number one thing that I keep seeing repeated in the news is about the ubiquitous trash can issue. So if you leave your trash can at the curb, it can be there for 24 hours before or after its scheduled collection period, and they cannot fine you if it's within that 24-hour period. And then there are a couple of more issues that made me wonder, like, why this had to be made into legislation. You can have a vegetable garden now in your backyard as long as it's not visible from your neighbor's property and adjacent common area. So if you live near like a park within the community, or from a golf course, if you're on a golf course. So my question is then, what if you're like, how can you hide a vegetable garden if your neighbor has a 2-story home? Like, I don't see how they're not going to be able to see it. And is that going to become a problem? And what if you have a banana tree? That's not really a vegetable, but they don't always look so beautiful. They kind of, the leaves kind of tend to die. Don't know about that, but you can have your vegetables growing, I guess, as long as nobody can tell. And you can also hang out your laundry to dry now, as long as the same thing, nobody can see it. A little harder to hide, but I guess if you have a privacy fence, maybe that's all they're hoping for. Also, HOAs are no longer going to be able to limit what you do sort of structurally inside your house, as long as, again, it's not visible from the front, from an adjacent common area, or from a golf course. And the same thing is true for your air conditioner. They can't ask to review and approve your AC if it's not visible. And I would encourage you, if you are a Florida homeowner or thinking about becoming one, to read this bill. It's HB House Bill 1203. I think it's about 40 pages. You can find the text of it online. It's a pretty easy read. And if you are thinking about moving to Florida, well, let me introduce myself. My name is Krista Tarns, and I have been a realtor in this area since 2009. And if you'd like to reach out to me, as many of you have, if you click on the title below this video, if you're watching on a cell phone, a bunch of information will populate. And there's a link to my calendar down there. It's called Calendly. You can click on that and set up a time to talk. I'd love to hear from you. Now, the part that I really like in this new bill is where they force HOAs to be transparent with their meetings and with their record keeping. And I think this was already part of the law, but or at least that was my understanding. They have to hang on to, minutes from meetings, financial information, everything for 7 years, and they have to make it available to homeowners. And this is the stuff that I really like. I'm not accusing every HOA of being like this, but I will say, when I take a listing and the homeowner lives in an HOA, and I say, hey, it'd be great if I could have some information about your HOA. Where can I get that? I don't know. I don't have it. It's this like gray cloud that nobody knows where to get rules and regulations and financial information. So now, if a community has more than 100 houses in it, they have to make this available on the website, and it has to be accessible to homeowners in the community. So they're going to have rules, covenants, budgets, and related documents, and that has to be available online by January 1st of 2025. Having lived in an HOA community, I can say that sometimes if certain people wanted to have certain things voted on in the board, they would just schedule a board meeting, and I think it just had to be posted in a public place. So they would post it someplace weird, like by the swimming pool, that in the middle of the winter where nobody was looking, have their meeting, reach a quora, and vote on it. Now, HOAs must provide notice and agendas for any scheduled meeting 14 days in advance on their website in plain sight. So it can't just be some page in the website that's not linked to anything. It has to be like on the main page. And any document to be considered and voted on must be posted online at least 7 days before the meeting. I love that. And now, if a homeowner requests official documents, the HOA has 10 days to respond, or they actually face getting a violation. Another interesting point is that an HOA officer, director, or manager who solicits offers and accepts kickbacks commits a third-degree felony and must be immediately removed from office. So I was trying to figure out exactly what this meant. I don't know that anybody's completely explained it. At least I wasn't able to find it. I am assuming it's something like if they're taking bids for some sort of a project, like, let's say they have to have trees cut down or something like that. They'll get a bunch of offers and they're not allowed to take money. So if one person said, I'll do it for $50,000, but I'll give you $5,000, they cannot do that. I'm assuming. If you know differently, please let me know, drop a comment. So it's almost shocking that some of this stuff wasn't already required. Like, a newly elected or appointed director must complete education on financial literacy and transparency, record keeping, levying of fines, and notice and meeting requirements within 90 days, and they have to do that again every 4 years. And directors of HOAs must, with 2,500 or fewer homes, must complete at least 4 hours of continuing education every year, or be suspended until they do so. I read somewhere people were complaining that they don't have the money to do this. I don't really think that this is a huge financial investment to get your director some continuing education class. And finally, HOA managers, so the management company hired by the residents, have to be involved and easy to find. And again, this is something that you can't believe had to be made into legislation, but they have to attend at least one annual member or board meeting, so they have to actually be there in person. You have to know who they are, who is the manager, and the contact information for them, as well as their hours of availability. For me, again, as a realtor, this is really important. Sometimes it is nearly impossible to figure out who you're supposed to talk to. So here's an example. Like when I sell a home that's in an HOA, a lot of homeowners associations charge the buyer like a capital fee, or they have different names for it, but it's like a one-time fee at closing of like $1,000, where they just want to collect a little bit of money up front. And it's nearly impossible to figure out if there is one. And you call the management company and you can never figure out who the actual manager is who's related to this community. Your seller doesn't have any paperwork on the community. I really hope that this law will kind of bring some clarity to these sorts of issues, because it's never pleasant when you sit down at the closing table and your buyer's like, what is this $1,000 fee for? Oh, well, that's the capital contribution fee that you're required to pay to the HOA. Well, that wasn't disclosed anywhere. Well, we just found out about it 2 days ago when the management company finally let us know that there was one. If you do live in an HOA community in Florida, or you're thinking about moving into one, I strongly recommend that you get a hold of all these documents, read them, familiarize yourself with them, attend the board meetings. Don't rely on your board to do what's in the best interest of your community for you. Make sure that you're active and participating. And before you purchase in an HOA community, definitely make sure that you are the sort of person that can deal with these rules. They definitely can help keep the value of your property up by maintaining certain standards, but they're definitely not for everyone. Thanks so much for watching.